Hey, what's up guys, welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be going over the new settings I've added to Fortnite, especially the new console setting that's actually pretty game changing. I did make a video on this console setting 8 months ago and it got over 2.2 million views, helping so many people become a better player. But back then, it was only available to certain people with the next gen console. This time, it's available for everyone. If you guys could drop a like on the video and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. And use code Flea in the item shop if you would like to support me further. Anyway, let's get right into the video. So as some of you may know, I have moved to PC with a controller now, so I no longer play on console, but I did play console Fortnite for the good part of a year and a half, so I can speak for the console players when I say this setting is very important. And what that setting is motion blur. Now if you already had a next gen console like the PS4 Pro or Xbox One X, you would have already had the option to turn off this setting, but for everyone else, you should turn off this setting, and let me tell you why. So if I just go into my settings, on PC I have a lot more options on this screen, but on console it should look like this, and you will now have the option to turn off motion blur. So on PC it's all the way down here for me, and I'm just going to turn it on to show you what it does. And a lot of you probably thinking like, oh Flea, I already know what motion blur is, you don't need to explain it to me, but there's more to it than you think. So straight away the first thing I can obviously notice is the motion blur, so when I'm spinning around it actually blurs the pixels. And the reason motion blur is on console is to make 60 frames feel a lot better, because 60 frames without motion blur kind of hurts your eyes a bit. So adding the motion blur in actually blurs the pixels together and it's a lot more soothing for your eyes. Motion blur also looks a lot better for videos if you are a content creator, but it also has its downsides, and let me go over that now. The next thing I noticed is that I'm actually losing quite a lot of frames putting on motion blur for some reason. It's definitely decreasing the performance of my game, but another big thing, and probably the most important thing, is that I can actually notice some input delay now with motion blur. And basically, for those of you who don't know what input delay is, it's basically when I input anything onto the controller, whether that be moving around, jumping, building, just anything you press on the controller, that's the input, and then the delay is how long it takes for the inputs to actually come up on the screen. So having input delay means that I'm moving around and it's not happening as quick as it should be on screen. And the reason that happens with motion blur is because it's actually blurring the pixels when you move, so you're not actually seeing the frame that you should be, you're seeing a few frames before that, which means you're going to have milliseconds of input delay. It might not be that noticeable at first, but when I was on console playing on my PS4 Pro and Fortnite gave us the option to turn off motion blur, once I got used to playing without motion blur, I could never go back because the input delay feels that bad. If you do want to improve your game and definitely become a better player, I highly recommend turning motion blur off, and after a few days of using it, you definitely won't go back because of how good it feels. Another negative for motion blur is that while moving your aim, it actually blurs everything. I know that sounds kind of obvious, but this actually affects your aim, because when you're trying to do flick shots or fast movements, your eyes actually don't get to see what's properly on your screen. Instead, it sees a very blurred version of it. As you can see the difference between motion blur and no motion blur, if I just pause the spinning now, you can see that everything is a lot harder to see, and you may not realize it, but in fights, it actually makes it harder for your brain to pick up your surroundings, because while you're moving, everything is always blurred. So definitely give no motion blur a try and let me know what you think. So another thing Fortnite's added is these settings here. So you got the hardware settings and the input settings, as well as all the way down the bottom you got your foot controller settings. So starting off with these hardware settings, the first thing I want to say is this makes settings videos a lot easier. When content creators do settings videos now, you're going to be able to see everything in one section, which makes it a lot easier. But what you may not know about these new dead zone settings is that it actually lets you check your dead zone. So if I just move my left analog stick, as you can see the yellow circle expand, and it pretty much just shows you your dead zone. I recommend playing as low as dead zones as possible, and the way to figure out your lowest dead zone is to just move your stick around a little bit and look at that yellow circle and see where it rests, and it's the biggest. So if I push it up to the top, as you can see, it rests pretty big there, so I'm gonna have to keep mine on around 10%. Whereas my right dead zone, if I move it around, it stays under 5%, which is what I want, so I'm gonna keep mine at 5%. If you get really bad stick drift, you may wanna up your dead zone. Just make sure the blue circle is always bigger than the yellow circle to avoid stick drift. So if for some reason my yellow circle was this big, I would have to make my blue circle bigger to compensate for the stick drift. Alright, and that's about everything new with the controller settings. If you guys actually want to see a video of me going back to console and playing some pubs or 1v1s, do be sure to let me know in the comments, because I have my PS4 Pro set up right next to me ready to go. Anyway, that's going to be it for this video. If you made it to the end, drop a strawberry emoji in the comments. I hope you learned something new from this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.